Hey guys, it's me, Fluffy Bear, and originally I had another idea planned for my next video, but I just haven't really been in the mood to make videos recently. I've honestly just been enjoying my time off of work, but I figured it's been long enough and I've got health updates, so might as well make a video explaining my experience with chemotherapy and dealing with doctors and such. Explain how I've been feeling with it all and how the process has been. Tell my experience with it for anyone who's about to go through chemo or anyone curious about how it's been affecting me, anything like that. So if this helps you out, then that's good. If not, then hopefully it's at least a little entertaining somehow. So yeah, enjoy the power washing footage while I yap about everything that's been going on. So I didn't give a lot of information in my update video when I announced I have cancer. I kind of made that video as soon as I had confirmation that I could get time off of work. I was honestly just waiting for an okay from the doctor so I'd at least know if I had to work while dealing with the whole process. I wanted to wait until I could say either 1, I won't be making videos at all while I take chemo, or 2, what I did end up saying, which is I may be able to work on videos more because I won't be working. Something that surprised me was that video ended up actually getting more than 200 views. I wasn't expecting that video to hit the algorithm well at all. It was to the point that plenty of people who hadn't even heard of me watched it as well, which was a major surprise. I had a few people who had cancer in the past and went through chemotherapy themselves who gave me small pieces of advice in the comments, which was cool. But enough about that. Onto the actual timeline of what happened after that last update. The first thing is that it actually took way longer than I was comfortable with to get to a point where I knew I was going to start chemo. You may have noticed that I didn't actually say which stage of cancer I have in the update video, and that's because I just didn't know at the time. Something I've had to get used to with doctors and general medical stuff is that so much of it is just waiting for the next available appointment, waiting to get approval for something, waiting for God knows what, and it just sucks. You just kind of have to sit there and wait. It especially sucked for someone in my position where I didn't know if I had stage 4 or not. I had this lump on my chest for almost a year at that point, and by the time the chemo started, it had been about a year of me feeling some kind of chest pain as well. And I had no clue if that was long enough that it could have gone to stage 4, or at least to a point where I'd need surgery or anything like that. So it was very stressful for me. I first saw an oncologist properly around mid-January, and he just gave me basic information about what was going to happen and gave me one medication to start right away, which was basically to protect my kidneys while I'm undergoing chemo, as they can get affected during treatment. He also gave me another medication that's to help me handle nausea if it ever pops up as well. And he also told me a bunch of side effects that I might experience and get myself prepared for, including that I'm probably gonna go bald, although that last part still hasn't happened yet. My hair is definitely thinner now, but I haven't fully gone bald. But yeah, stuff like that, plus the fact that I might be able to get temporary disability while I'm undergoing chemotherapy. I'm not entirely sure what happened next, but I believe I needed to get blood work done after that point, which is something that certainly has sucked about this whole process. I've needed to get a lot of blood taken out, like a lot of blood. But at this point, I think they needed to get blood work done to basically see if I was physically fit enough to receive chemo and be okay and make sure there'd be no complications with it. And then after that, I needed to get something called a PET scan. If you have cancer, you need to do these scans throughout the process of your battle, and trust me, they will suck to get. A PET scan is similar to a CT scan where they put you on this table and you go through this little tube thing that scans your whole body as the table takes you in and out of it. A PET scan specifically is where they inject you with this special, I think it's a radioactive sugar, before you go in and get scanned. And that's supposed to make the scan more accurate, or at the very least make the cancer more visible in the scan. The scan itself is mostly fine outside of having to pass the half hour of time that you're in there without music or a phone or anything. But to prep for the scan, well, because it relies on your body absorbing the sugar, you can't have any sugar or carbs the day before and the morning leading up to the scan. And what that basically means is you can pretty much only have hard cheese, meat, and eggs for a day. Good luck getting your daily recommended calories on just meat, eggs, and cheese for a day. You also can't have any soda or juices or anything fancy to drink, just water. It's not as easy as it may sound. So yeah, that sucked. That was torture for a day, especially for me because I'm kind of fat and like food. But I got through it, and then I got the scan the following day. It's funny because I walk into the building where the scan takes place, and the nurse comes in, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says something along the lines of, "Were you able to go on that no fun diet?" And I just laugh because that really was what I just went through, a whole day of having a no fun diet. But yeah, I go in, they inject me with the sugar thing, and they make me wait an hour because they have to let it run through your system properly. And then the scan itself took half an hour, as I mentioned earlier. At least it did for me, because they want to scan my whole body and see if cancer has affected anywhere else on my body, and see just how big the mass is. That was in late January, and this is where the whole process just hits a huge snag. So as I mentioned, I first went to an oncologist in mid-January. And I thought, this is later than I was hoping for, but at least I've got the process started. Little did I know, I kinda got cancer at the worst time for the area I'm in. So to go as soon as possible, and with the insurance that I ended up getting, I had to go to an oncology facility that was 20 minutes away by car. And the specific location that I had to go to was shutting down like a month after my first appointment. Luckily, it's a chain of facilities, so I was able to move to an oncologist who was closer to me before the location officially closed, but still. So that took a while to get me officially situated to the new location, and right when I'm starting to see this oncologist, she went on maternity leave. So I had like 2 months of appointments that were on the phone and with a nurse instead of the doctor herself. And then I'm not entirely sure what happened next, but I needed to get something called a port implanted into me, which is basically this special little device that they implant into your upper chest, and it's supposed to make it easier to give you the chemo drugs regularly instead of relying on an IV line every time. But for some reason, as I called to schedule the procedure to get it implanted, the person on the phone basically said that I needed to call my oncologist and have them send over some information or paperwork or something before I could get it scheduled. And for some reason, whatever it was that they needed from my oncologist just took forever to send to the hospital that was going to do the procedure. So remember, my first appointment with an oncologist was in mid-January, and even that was later than I was comfortable with already. But this is delayed even further, past another 2 or 3 months before I could start the treatment that I needed. So I go to yet another oncologist appointment, this time with the actual oncologist that I was seeing and not a nurse, and all I had done was blood work and a PET scan. And she essentially tells me, okay, just try to get the procedure scheduled because we can't start chemo without it. So another thing that I learned sucks about the medical system throughout this whole process is that everything is reliant on you. Every appointment you have to schedule, telling certain places to give your files to another place is something you have to do. Everything relies on you. You have to go out of your way to make sure it gets done. And that kind of sucks because this is my first major run-in where like I need doctors or anything like that as an adult. And I'm used to how everything was when I was in school, where pretty much everything that you need, the school counselor just does it for you and then tells you where you need to go. Maybe they'll ask for your opinion on what you want, but they'll set up the classes or the appointments with a therapist or whatever you need. And of course, if it isn't the counselor, then it's my mom scheduling stuff for me and taking me when it's time to go. So I'm just used to people telling me I have to go here at this time, and then I just go. But now I have to actively be the one who steps up to things for myself and call places to make sure they do what I need them to do. And I'm just so unused to that still. But hey, that's the whole adulting thing. Nothing new there. It just sucks because I already kind of sucked at the few responsibilities I had, and now everything needs to rely on me for my medical stuff, which just kind of sucks more. And as the joke goes with us Gen Z kids, I fucking hate making phone calls. So yeah, I'd be lying if I said that all of that didn't at least contribute to why it took so long for this process to start. Like, I remember there were a few times when I'd call someone about trying to get this whole thing resolved, and the person on the phone made it sound like they were going to go ahead and figure it out for me. But then I'd call later, and someone new would explain to me that I had to be the one to do it, and that they could only do so much in their position. So yeah, that confused me because I was fairly certain the previous person assured me that they'd get it handled, but I guess I misinterpreted them or something. Nonetheless, we get to late March, and whatever the issue they were having gets resolved finally, and they tell me that I just need one more thing of blood work done to make sure I'll be fine during the procedure, then we could get started on treatment. It's funny because this whole thing was a months-long process, but describing it now, it doesn't feel like it should have been a months-long process. Although, when I finally got to see my oncologist, she basically told me, yeah, this happens a lot. Something always comes up and causes delays, but at least it's happening now. So I had to wait around for a couple of months after starting this process, and I just basically had to continue on with my life without being sure when it would finally continue so I could finally get this chapter of my life over with. But eventually, everything gets sorted out, I get the blood work they needed, and I finally schedule the procedure that I need. At this point, it's the beginning of April, and I'm not sure how it'll go down going into it. All I know is that they told me to get there at a certain time. It takes 30 minutes for my doctor to be ready. They'll do the procedure on me, and then they'll keep me for a while afterwards to make sure I'm okay to leave home. At this point, I realize I don't know how money is going to work because I won't be able to work while I'm recovering from the surgery, and then I'll immediately start chemo once I have recovered. So I just kind of have the whole money thing in the back of my mind as I'm going in for this procedure. But yeah, I show up, the nurse tells me to change into the hospital gown, and she tells me that the doctor is getting ready and is with somebody else at the moment. And it takes way longer than they told me it would take for the doctor to be ready. I guess there was some holdup or something, I don't know. But eventually the doctor calls me in, and I'm taken to the operating room. Another nurse shows me the port device and explains how the procedure is going to go, and explains a couple of side effects and things to look out for. Then the procedure starts, and let me tell you, it sucked. Like a lot. So every doctor is different and there are different port devices and all that, but the way they did it for me, you see, they gave me local anesthetic, and the thing about local anesthetic is there's nothing to dull the pain of the needle going in, so that's always going to hurt at least a little bit. And getting an anesthetic in the neck area, again, at least for me, really hurt way more than I thought it would. At least it hurt more than any other anesthetic I've gotten beforehand. And it definitely numbed the pain, but not as much as I had hoped for. Like, I don't know if it was just a lot of pressure on my neck or I should have asked for more numbing, but there's no other way for me to describe it than getting this procedure done on me just really sucked to do. Yeah, I was not nearly as prepared as I should have been for this mentally, and it very much caught me by surprise. Beforehand, my first oncologist told me that I would have to be careful moving my arm where the port was implanted next to, and so before the actual procedure, I asked the nurse to confirm if the oncologist was correct about what he said, and she basically told me, "No, I should be fine," and let me tell you, at least for the few weeks after the procedure while I was recovering, she was very wrong. Immediately afterwards, I could feel the stitch and everything being pulled on it if I moved even a little bit in certain ways, and it was very difficult to move around. I also just generally was feeling a lot of soreness after the procedure. Some pain as well, but honestly, I just felt very sore as I was healing from the whole process. So, because of everything I just said, I asked for a couple of days off of work while I healed from the procedure, and the healing procedure was a lot worse than I thought it would be. I was also just not very prepared for it, and I was only thinking about chemotherapy and how bad that would be. So for a couple of days, I was very sore. I had to be very careful about not moving my arm too much, and I also couldn't shower for the first few days, and the nurse told me that even when I do shower, I should make sure to cover where the stitches were and not get them wet. So that made me terrified to shower for 2 weeks, so I just avoided it entirely. A bit TMI, but I was terrified. I don't know what to tell you. It took about a whole week for it to stop being cumbersome, I guess is the way I would describe it. For it to not be a burden on my movements or on my sleep, which, by the way, I had to sleep in kind of a weird way. I had to be very conscious of sleeping in a way that didn't tug on the stitches, and doing that kind of made my neck sore by the morning. It was annoying, but then 2 weeks of recovery passed by, and I was mostly back to normal, save for if I tried to lift something a little heavy or move in very specific ways. Right after surgery, I called my oncology place to schedule my first session of chemotherapy, and we decided to schedule it for 2 weeks afterwards, which I didn't realize but was actually kind of perfect, as that's how long it would take for me to recover. I was a little worried at first because I was getting closer and closer to the first session of chemotherapy, and it did not feel as healed as it should have been. For one thing, they put some kind of tape over the stitches, and that was supposed to come off naturally, but it just didn't before chemo started. Luckily, the nurse at the chemotherapy place said it was fine and just took it off with the help of some alcohol, which is good. I had an appointment with my oncologist 2 days before the first session, and that's where I finally learned what stage my cancer was at. At that point, the PET scan that I took was actually kind of old just because of everything taking so long, the process to get to this point. So the oncologist told me that my cancer might have gotten to stage 3 at this point, but if not, it was definitely at stage 2. And that was the greatest news of my life. Because, as I mentioned, I had no idea how far along this thing had gotten inside of me. I didn't know if it was about to kill me, if I had gotten to stage 4 yet. All I knew was that this process was taking way longer than I wanted it to take. I was just so happy to hear that it was most likely stage 2, and the oncologist told me that even if it was stage 3, it'd be the same process and the same drugs and everything, so not much would change. I don't know, I guess it just felt nice to hear that it wasn't stage 4 yet, even though with this cancer and my age, stage 4 still has a very high survival rate. I guess I just felt nice that I wasn't at the final stage of cancer through all of my procrastinating and waiting. After that appointment, I just had this huge wave of relief come over me, especially because I was about to start the process of chemotherapy and officially start the process of getting rid of this thing that's haunted me for a year at this point. The appointment was 2 days before the chemo session, and my oncologist wanted me to start that same day because the place where I would get chemo was down the hall from where we were, but I declined because I wanted to wait the other 2 days and just make sure I was mentally prepared for it. However, I decided to compromise and go to have the side effects explained to me by the nurse so that when I got there on Friday, I could just start chemo right away. So I go in and sit down, and a nurse brings a small packet of papers and starts to explain all the different drugs they're going to use on me and the different side effects that each of them have. She also tells me a few things to look out for and report to them in case they happen to me, but luckily nothing like that ended up happening. But it's still good to know. Afterwards, I go home, and a common symptom of chemotherapy is nausea. And something I learned the first day of chemo is that apparently you can't drink Pepto-Bismol while taking the kidney medication they gave me, so if I have any stomach issues, I have to use the nausea medication that they gave me. So I went to my first session of chemotherapy, and in the process, they pump a lot of liquids in you. So I kind of had to pee a lot during the actual chemo session. And I also had to pee a lot throughout the rest of the day once I got home. But yeah, I go home after, and I immediately took a nap because I kind of didn't plan my sleep very well. But once I woke up, I started right away feeling a sense of nausea. So I decided it's a good time to test the medication they gave me for it. Luckily, it worked pretty well, but I learned that one side effect of this medication is that apparently it can give you hiccups, which is annoying, but it beats being nauseous, I guess. I had watched a few videos to prepare myself mentally for what to expect and what symptoms are common for chemo, and one that got brought up quite a bit was this feeling of numbness on the tips of your fingers and toes. And after the first session, I felt it. It didn't affect me too much right away, like it was enough to feel weird and annoying, but not a problem like the nurse said could happen. It did get a little worse by the weekend, but then it started to slowly go away, and then everything was fine. Apparently, chemo can also start to affect your mouth and teeth, and I don't know if it's just how it affects me, but something that happened to me is that I got a terrible feeling in my mouth for a few days. Like, I felt like there was a film along the inside of my mouth that I wanted to get out, but I couldn't because there's nothing there. For the first session, that was mostly it for symptoms. The way they're doing chemo for me is that it's a session of chemo every 2 weeks. For the second session, the nausea wasn't as bad as the first time, but I still felt some. And another thing about chemotherapy is that it kind of damages your immune system. So I've been having to remember to wear a mask whenever I go out, and I haven't been able to go to events where I'll be around large crowds like concerts and stuff like that. I was very bad at remembering to wear my mask after the first session, but after the second one, I got much better at remembering. I'm not sure if it's because I would forget to mask or if it just coincidentally started up, but after the second session, I had developed a bit of a cough. It wasn't enough to be fully sick, but it did feel a little bad, and the main thing was just that I had this cough for a week that was stubborn. Probably because I actually went to a family party and completely forgot to mask the entire time. Whoops. But yeah, this was also the last time I really felt straight up nausea. I still have one chemo session left, so never say never, but after this point, I mostly felt moments of heaving, like I was about to throw up, but not long-term nausea. After my second session, I had to get PET scan number 2, and the preparation for this one was much worse than the first one I had to get. The first scan was to get an idea of how bad it is, figure out what stage I'm at, and get a baseline of the cancer going into chemotherapy, and now I had to get a second scan to basically see how well the chemo was doing and making sure it's actually doing the job we want it to be doing and killing the cancer. So the first scan I had to do that special diet, and since it was before chemo, it was hard, but there was no side effects to suffer through while trying to stick to the diet. But now, since I had to prepare while feeling the side effects, it was so much harder because I felt sick, I had the mouth feel thing going on, and I had my stomach feeling the linger of nausea, and everything compounded together to just make this one of the worst days of my life. But eventually I got through it. I went to take the scan, and I was very happy to eat whatever I wanted immediately afterwards. I mentioned that this whole time I had a bump on my chest, and it was pretty big by the time I started chemotherapy. If I had to guess, I'd say it was about the size of 2 golf balls placed next to each other on my chest. It was pretty far out and getting pretty wide by the time that chemotherapy actually started, so that really added to my anxiety of everything taking so goddamn long. I'm not sure if it was me tricking myself, but I swear it started to flatten out at least a little bit right away, like the first day. For sure, after a week, and by the time I was getting ready for the third chemo session, it was really going down in size. By the third session, the bump was close to being flat, and that made me so happy. I remember telling my friends and family about how much the bump was shrinking and being super excited about it. It's hard to tell from the outside, but it really feels like progress really slowed down after the second session, which is frustrating, but luckily it's getting steadily smaller, even if it wasn't as visibly fast as when I started. I'm just hoping that's because a lot of the cancer cells that needed to die were under my ribs or something like that. It was a while ago, so I don't remember much about the scan results when I got to my next oncologist appointment, but I remember that I had completely forgotten, but I had developed a second cancer mass inside of my neck, apparently. I believe it was also on my lymph nodes, so it was the same type of cancer, just a different area now. But luckily, I found out from the oncologist telling me that it was gone now, so that immediately freaked me out for a second before becoming a weird sense of relief that it was already gone. Going back to everything with money, though, back when I had the surgery done, I called my supervisor to let work know I wouldn't be able to work for a while, and they said, okay, just make sure to provide a doctor's note so we can start the process to find someone to cover you. I thought that would be easy, but I called my oncologist's office and they said someone will get to it, Like, there was no update on if someone made the note or if they were going to send it to me or anything. So for a few days, my routine was me waking up, having my supervisor tell me I needed the doctor's note still, me telling the oncologist's office I still needed the doctor's note, them reassuring me someone will get to it, and then nothing happening. Eventually, my supervisor gave me a deadline that I needed the note by, and it was the last day before the deadline that I finally got the doctor's note so I could send it to work and officially be excused. That whole process was frustrating and anxiety-inducing, but at least it got done eventually. As for getting paid specifically, I looked up the process to get temporary disability while I take my leave from work, and California has something called State Disability Insurance, or SDI, so I started the process online. It was a bit confusing because the company I work for uses a separate company to handle HR, and therefore my payments go through a different company, but I just set it up like I have 2 employers, and it's a bit confusing, but I had to wait a little bit, then apply, then go in person to an office building to get a physical paper, give that paper to my oncologist, get my oncologist to fill it out, and then mail it in. My oncologist also took a long while to fill out this paper, which was, again, frustrating because I still had bills to pay and this was holding up the process. I got my last paycheck from work on the 15th of April, and it wasn't even a full paycheck, and I didn't end up getting paid for my disability until May 19th. Luckily, my mom decided to sell my car since I was taking a while to get my license, and that gave me some money to hold me over until SDI could come in, so it wasn't that bad, luckily. Well, something confusing happened with the initial hospital visit. So, at first, I had to pay an amount of money, and they sent a letter in the mail and gave me a website where I could go set up a payment plan to pay it off. So that's what I did, and I paid it off for a few paychecks before I realized that they hadn't charged me for a while. So, I checked the website, and apparently that's because my insurance just paid off the rest, which was confusing to me, but I was grateful for it. At least I didn't have to pay so much. However, now, a couple of months later, they sent me a new letter saying I still had to pay for it, and now with a larger bill. And to make matters worse, the hospital where I had the port implanted into me also sent me another separate bill. So if you'd like to help me cover those bills, check out my Ko-fi in the description, please. Since I haven't been working, I finally had time where I'm home when most people are home. So I've been hanging out with my friends and playing games with them regularly, and that's something I've been very happy about. I've also been streaming at a reasonable time while I've been off of work. If you go onto twitch.tv/fluffy_bear, spelled like that, you will see my recent VODs, and I may even be streaming now as you're watching this. I have a goal of streaming 2 to 4 times a week, and I haven't actually been hitting that goal recently, but I'm hoping that from now on, until at least the time I go back to work, I can actually maintain that goal. Also, I reached affiliate while I've been off of work, which is really exciting. You can go on ahead and subscribe to me if you like. Maybe use a Prime sub if you have it available. I have some cute emotes to use, and you can get a sub badge in chat. And speaking of not working and how you can support me, if you'd like to, then please check out my Ko-fi. I'm not big enough to get sponsors on my videos, so this really helps me out. If you do, I'll shout you out in the next video. And since my last video, I've gotten support from Ko-fi user literally you2, who gave me $50 and said, "Good luck, my friend. Stay hydrated and keep family and friends close. I believe in you." So thank you very much. That money went straight to my chemo copay. And if you'd like to be given a shout out just like that, link is in the description below. Going back to my chemo symptoms, after session 3 and onwards, the side effects became different, but consistent. I stopped feeling nausea like I said earlier, and instead just started feeling a general sense that's hard to describe, but it just generally feels bad to exist for a couple of days. Although it wasn't to the point I felt like I ever needed to go to the hospital or anything. Once again, one last session, so never say never, but hopefully it won't happen this time either. The weird mouthfeel thing got stronger and lingers around more, and the worst symptom I started to experience every time onwards from like session 3 is that food just tastes terrible for a few days. Like, that doesn't sound that bad, but most food I try will just taste like mush and make me want to throw up. And I can't distract myself with TikTok or YouTube because half the fucking content the algorithms give me is people trying food, and specifically for TikTok, food spots advertising themselves that I can't go to even if I was close because everything will suck to eat at the moment. Weirdly enough, the one food that doesn't taste that bad while this is affecting me is Frosted Flakes, of all things. For some reason, it's a lot easier to stomach than anything else, and as a result, every time after chemo, I spend like 5 days just eating cereal and feeling bad. It sucks. But that's the process you gotta go through to get rid of cancer, so I guess I just have to keep on keeping on. Luckily, after day 4 or 5 rolls around, my symptoms slowly calm down, and I slowly get my taste back, and then life is good again. I originally wanted this video to come out after like session 3 back in May, but kind of procrastinated so long. I'm actually about to have my final session of chemo as I finish up the script. I say final, but technically I have to wait 2 weeks after to get another PET scan, and then wait another week or two to go back to my oncologist where she will tell me if I need more chemo or if I'm officially cancer-free. I do have thoughts about being close to finishing and finally being cancer-free again, but this video is already long enough, so I'll save those for a different video when I'm officially cancer-free. Hopefully I can make a video and release it before then that isn't about cancer, as I know I won't get the news until like late August, but it took me this long to make this video, so who knows. And that's it. Hopefully this was able to at least entertain you while you eat, or inform you about the process of chemo, or help you prepare yourself for your own cancer battle. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed and that you have a good day. Make sure to leave a relevant comment and drop a like, and subscribe if you're interested in what I'll make next. Once again, you can support me via the link of Ko-fi in the description, and on screen there will be a few recommendations of my other videos you could check out, so give one a click and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!